All right, so I have recently been writing a paper with the eminent Dr. Taryn Hess, who is on a call with me now. So, welcome. Great to be working with you on all of this. So, in the paper, we were talking about the combination of culture and change in the light of data literacy in the age of generative AI, and how data literacy forms an important part of the overall success factors for implementing AI. But data literacy is not a thing that stands alone. Obviously, we have to think about adoption, culture, change, people, and all of these kinds of things. And you have developed a model that not only outlines what is successful in terms of culture and change, but also how organizations can be implementing change successfully. So let's start off with, we've outlined this in the paper, of course, but let's start off with, why is this important?
So, and thank you. I'm excited to be here, obviously, working with you on our paper and being able to share this out with the world at this point. So, this whole culture change framework came out of the need for us to focus on people, right? So, it's so easy to think about the tech side of things and to get your processes in place. People are that hard part of the equation. So, when you boil it down, and you think about, well, what does that mean? Like, how do I get people bought into this? And then you think about culture, it feels so nebulous. It feels squishy and gray and hard to wrap your hands around. So this framework was born out of that idea. It was born out of working with clients, seeing this real and live, and talking with people and being in this space for some time. So the framework takes that squishiness out of the people side of things. It doesn't make it easy per se, right? People stuff is hard, but it gives a framework or a roadmap, so to speak, on the things that we need to tackle in order to make this real. When we break that down, we have to think about growing people. We have to think about aligning people, getting them on the same page, and we have to support people. So when you take that down a bit further and you think about this in light of data, and you think about it also with AI, obviously AI and data are married together forever. They cannot separate from each other. You have to look at building a language formally, like first and foremost, and that's part of that grow piece. So in order to get people to speak the same language, you have to define what are the same words that we need to use and come to a consensus on that. And then you have to share that with everybody. You have to talk about it. You can't just define these things and leave them in your data catalog. Because, again, that's where that people piece comes into play, right? You've got to get this out to everybody. So, you're shaking your head. So obviously this resonates, right? So you probably have been, worked with other people on this. Like, it's easy to find these words, but then you've got to get it out to people.
I think some of my reflections on that are that I remember, when was it? It was probably easily 10 years ago, and I was sitting in one of these sort of reasonably generic training rooms with a reasonably generic training course, and I can't remember exactly what the course was, but it was something that typically managers go on, maybe influencing or negotiating or some kind of soft skills training. And it's kind of a shame that I don't remember what the topic was, but it was around people. And the guy was outlining this kind of model, and he said, when you're talking to other people, then you are standing on top of a hill, and that hill is made up of your value set and your attitudes, and all experiences that you've had, and the country that you come from, the language that you use, and your family and what their views are, and the friends that you keep, and the things that you've done at work, and all of these things basically form this hill. And you stand on top of this hill, and the other person that you're talking with, they're standing on top of their hill, and they're talking about all of the things they're talking about from a perspective built on their values and attitudes and all of these other things. And that means that interpersonal conversations tend to be slightly difficult, because whoever we're talking with, there is a distance. And if you have a lot of shared values and shared culture and all of these things, then the distance is not that great. So you can understand each other. You don't really have to bridge the chasm with discourse. And if you're far away from each other, there's a big gap that you've got to address. And this is that I found that really interesting and memorable. And you know, we talk about learning experiences, and this was something that I found memorable. Even 10, 12 years later, I'm still thinking about that model. But the reason it's important in what you've just said is that organizational culture is built of lots of these little hills, and people do have some shared values and some shared culture, but they also have very disparate beliefs about data, technology, change, the fear that change brings, or whether they embrace that change. And all of these things are so important. This is what you were alluding to around, you know, people en masse are squishy, because people as individuals, of course, the determinants of behavior are usually multivariate, but people, when we think about them as a group, can be difficult to manage, to herd in a particular direction, and all of these things. So that squishiness, does it make it interesting, or does it make it more difficult, or what do you think?
Oh man, it does all of that, right? So it makes it more interesting, it makes it more difficult, and then when you throw AI on top of it, as you were just describing around the fear, the unknown, it even not just the unknown, but different perspectives, it exacerbates what's happening here with this chasm that you could potentially have. So getting people closer and being able to talk and being able to have conversations, because that's ultimately what we're trying to do, is you get them closer, as you're describing, which I think is a great visual, right, of what we're talking about here when it comes to culture and language, to get them closer, that core, just ontologies, taxonomies, basic stuff, we can get them on the same page about, then they can have those conversations, and it continues to bring them closer and closer. They can stay in their areas, right? Like they're gonna have perspectives and different things, different goals, different needs. That's okay, as long as fundamentally that foundation, that base of their mountain is, you know, built on the same bedrock. Then they can work together. They can have different bridges and different things, and that they can work together on.
Yeah, and you can then navigate the gap with discourse that shares a common language, right? So if everyone's talking the same language, then to some degree misunderstandings are, you know, slightly different. So when we think about the key elements of cultural transformation or change management, because cultural transformation and change management, it's not so much my field, but I've heard both of these terms, and I've worked with both of these terms alongside things like business change and various other terminologies that basically mean the same thing. But what are the key elements of the model that you've developed, and what are the key success factors, so the things to really get right if you want to even have a chance? We can't guarantee change management, but we can kind of, you know, give it a fighting chance, right? Well, what are the key things?
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. So, completely agree. We have to foster this, right? Like, you cannot just say, okay, you go do these things and you walk away, right? That's why there's all of these layers to this framework, is in order for this to be successful, this is a long-term investment in your people. And to do that, you have to think about all of these different pieces. So the different things that I would say you have to do to make this successful. Yes, long-term, you got to change your mindset. We can't just flip the switch, right? Like, we can't just go buy tech and think it's going to work. Right? With people, you have to continually encourage them. And how you start with that is by understanding their fears. You need to communicate with them, right? You need to get, and not just understand their fears, be able to show them the value that this is going to bring for them. And you need to do it on, not just from a company standpoint, because that's great, right? Like, we all want our company to do well. And for a lot of us, that might mean some money in our pocket if the stocks do well, right? Like, maybe you have some incentives there. But fundamentally, what does it mean for me in my role? I want to know, how is this going to benefit me? Because change is scary. Change also means that I have to do new things, right? I have to upskill and learn this new tool or new process. And what was wrong with the old one if it wasn't broken? Right? So you have to understand fundamentally, what does it mean for that person? What is the impact on that person? And then communicate with them. Before you can even do that, though, you have to understand your vision. Like, why are you doing this to begin with? What is this going to mean for your company? And you have to build a strategy around that. And part of that strategy, yes, needs to include tech, it needs to include process, but you have to think about, how am I going to communicate and support my people in getting the skills that they need? So before I even talk to them, right, like, I need to understand, what are the skills I need to accomplish this thing that I'm trying to do, my vision. So mapping out my goals, my strategy, building out those skills that I need my people to have, doing an analysis of, do my people have these skills? Do they not? Who can I shift around? Who wants to be upskilled? Because that's another piece of this equation. Maybe there's people that are super eager and excited and they want to jump in on this and learn about it. But maybe you have some people that maybe they want to shift gears and go a different direction. So you have to be able to support them throughout their total employee experience. So you get the skills mapped out. Then you got to think about your org structure. Maybe there's an impact to it. Maybe there's not. Then how is it going to impact my hiring practices? How do I then take those skills, right? Because that's tied into all of those pieces around vision, strategy, communications, all of it. Then I've got my language, right? I need to get everyone to speak the same language, right? I've got the base of my mountain. Now, when I have all these different peaks, how do I support them in their role with these new skills I need them to have? So you have to have education around that. Education that's not just one-time thing, right? We don't need a check-in-the-box education. We need education that's going to evolve as these skills evolve, and as your vision evolves, as your strategy evolves, as people want to grow within their roles. I know this is not a quick answer either, that I keep adding these things on, and then you've got all of that stuff. How am I going to support them? You have to have support in place. Is it going to be mentorship? Is it coaching? Is it all on the job stuff? Do I need to make it formal, informal? Do I have a community in place to support people as they're going through this, and not just at the beginning, as they're maturing, as they're growing their skill set, as those skills are evolving based on your vision changing, your needs changing, as their roles are changing, as the tech is changing, and then you have to have something in place to help support that and help govern that and help build standards. And I don't mean governing as in like having a stick, right? That's not what we mean. We mean by providing some guardrails around this that are obviously oversight, continually as a part of discussion. Exactly. So lots of things have to be in place for this to be successful.
It's interesting how many like parallels, and we've written a paper on this, so we've called out some of these parallels in the work that we're doing. But the parallels between culture and change management and the success factors for AI implementation, starting with that point of purpose, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to implement change or technology just for the sake of change and technology? That's this point about being able to do something with purpose or having a purposeless implementation, which is almost guaranteed to give you not the best results, right? But from that all the way through to thinking about data and thinking about people and thinking about communication and managing that through. It takes me back to thinking about adoption modeling and acceptance modeling when I was during my PhD. I was doing this, and the determinants of successful technology, acceptance, or the formation of intent that goes through to the observable behavior. This idea of support, this idea of basically either social or procedural or infrastructural support that isn't hindering your use of a technology. So you might form the intention to do something, but then be prohibited from doing it because the conditions don't allow you to do it. And that's that's a thing that we need to consider, because even if you galvanize hearts and minds and you lead the people to a new utopia, which is a changed state, if you don't have all of the support in place, they might want to do it, but they can't do it because of reasons, right? And this is I really want to use this app, but my phone won't connect to the Wi-Fi, right? It's even down to that level of, facilitating conditions, which is quite interesting that there's that parallel between all of the things that we've talked about mutually in our paper. So, 3 key takeaways. If I had to do culture and change management around data and around data literacy in the age of generative AI, which is the title of our paper, what 3 things should I be thinking about if I'm a learning leader, HRO, something like that?
Oh, okay. So from an HRO learning leader standpoint, I would say big things are, you need to find out, if you don't already know, which you probably do, but if you don't, you need to go talk to the right people. Find out what is your data and AI vision and strategy for your company. What is it? Figure that out, right? Then you have to align everything else to it, as we were both just talking about. So the next steps then, when I'm thinking about HR and learning in particular, is what are then those tasks that map out to that vision and strategy, specifically with data and AI, that need to happen. And you're going to have to work super closely with your tech, your IT department, right? Everyone there, to make sure you understand and you have synergies on the direction on which you're trying to head. From there, you can figure out what are the skills, right? And looking at that, you can do that skills analysis and map out what are your gaps, what do you have in place. From there, you can then start to support your employees in a way that helps them, but not just in a way that helps them, in a way that's going to support and align with the overall vision of the company. So I would say, figure out that strategy and vision. There's one in place. There is. Yeah. Right? Somebody is working on it right now at your organization. You need to figure out what that is and work with them, partner with them then on figuring out what those tasks are, which then drive those skills that you need as the foundation for everything you should start to be doing moving forward. And then from there, you can start building out the rest. You can build out what are the role-specific trainings I need? What are the things that my people understand and already have a common language around, and what are the things they don't? You may have a base to work on, or maybe you're starting from the scratch and you have to build up that full, the base of your mountain, and it keeps going from there, right? Because then you can build out all of the support mechanisms and all of those other pieces.
As you were talking, I was thinking of the basically know thyself, right? Know your people. What are they concerned about? Know your purpose. Where are you going? Know your resource base. What do you have to play with? Know your direction. Where do you want to go? It's kind of a little bit like that, but it's so interesting how all of this, whether it's tech strategy or culture and change, or whether it's learning strategy, that basically the principles are very, very similar. And we call this out on our paper. There it is. So without further ado, let's pause there and we'll continue talking about the rest of our paper in the next session.
Sounds great.